Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Chaf Vav Amud Beis 26b of Maseches Taanis, and this time we're starting basically in the middle of the page because we're starting from the beginning of the Gemara after the Mishnah. So it's where you have a big Gimel Mem for Gemara, and the Gemara begins by quoting the Mishnah. It says, "Bishlosha prakim bashana, 3 times a year, Kohanim nosing es kapeim chulei." The Kohanim would raise their hands, they would do duchening, they would do the Birkas Kohanim, the Kohen's blessing, 3 times. What did they do 3 times? So the Mishnah said that 3 times a year they would do it arba pa'amim bayom, 4 times in one day. And what were those 3 times? What were the 4 times in one day? B'shachris, it said, B'musaf, b'mincha, uvene'ilah sha'arim. At Shacharis, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah, they would do the duchening, the Birkas Kohanim, 4 times. And it said they did that 3 times a year. What were the 3 days a year that they did it? It says it was B'tainios, uvema'amados, uveyom HaKippurim. They would do it on fast days. On ma'amados, which we talked about in the Mishnah, was these days where it was basically an ongoing rotation of families of Yisraelim who would daven and fast on behalf of the Karban Tamid that was being brought, the daily offering that was being brought that day or that week. And so that throughout that week, that family would fast, or those families who were on that Maimud, and Yom Kippur. So we have 3 times a year the fasts, the Ma'amados, which is in a way was ongoing, and on Yom Kippur. So our Gemara begins with a question. The Gemara says, Tainios uma'amados mi'ika musaf. Did they daven musaf on fast days and on ma'amados and on these special ma'amados, these special days where the families would daven on behalf of the Karban? Mi'ika musaf, was there musaf on those days that you would have it 3 times? It sounds like there was Ne'ilah, but Musaf there wasn't. Musaf has to coincide with the Karban Musaf, the additional offering that was brought on Yom Tovim, our holiday specifically, and that there wasn't a new Karban enacted for fast days, and therefore there wouldn't be a tefillah. You wouldn't daven Musaf on fast days, but apparently they did have Ne'ilah on these days. So the question is specifically about Musaf. How could you say that they did it 4 times? That they duchened, that the Kohanim did the Birkas Kohanim 4 times on Tainios, on fast days, and on the Maimad days, if there wasn't Musaf? So the Gemara says, Chasuri mechsera b'hachi kitani. Really, the Mishnah is missing some words. You need to add in a few words to properly understand the Mishnah. Either, possibly intentionally missing those words, but it wants us to delve deeper. V'hachi kitani, this is what it really is saying. It's saying, Bishlosha prakim kohanim nosing eskapein kol zman shemispalin. There's 3 times a year that the Kohanim would duchen all the times that they davened, all the tefillos of the day. V'yesh me'en arba pamim yom. And among those days that they duchened, at all the tefillahs, so some of them, it was 4 times in one day. What were the 4 times? Shachris, umusaf, mincha, ne'ilah, sha'arim. Right? At those 4 times, Shachris, musaf, mincha, and ne'ilah. Ve'elein shlosha prakim. These are the 3 times of the year that they would do this, that they would ducheng at all the tefillahs. Tainios, uma'amados, ve'yom HaKippurim. It was on the fast days, on the Maimad days, and on Yom Kippur. Specifically on Yom Kippur, it was 4 times, because then they had Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah. On the other days, it was only 3 times. Shachris, Mincha, and Ne'ilah. But in both examples, all 3 of these examples, Tainios, Ma'amados, and Yom Kippur, they would duchen at every tefillah, as opposed to on a normal day, where you would only duchen. And this is true still in Eretz Yisrael, where they duchen every day, and I believe Sfardim also, that you may duchen they do the Birkas Kohanim at Shachris and Musaf if it's Shabbos, but they don't do it at Mincha. You don't do it at all the tefillahs, and we're going to see why in just a moment. Okay, so the Gemara continues. It says, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. Rav Nachman sang in the name of Rabba, the son of Avua, Zu Divrei Rabbi Meir. This Mishnah, our Mishnah, that says that they duchen at all the tefillahs on fast days, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Abal Chachamim Omrim, but the Chachamim say, the other sages say, Shachris and Musaf yesh b'hen nesiyas kabayim. Shachris and Musaf have duchening. Mincha uneila ein b'hen nesiyas kapayim. But Mincha and Neila did not have duchening, did not have the blessing of the Kohanim. Now why? So we'll see. Man Chachamim, who is this Chachamim that we're talking about? Who is this opinion of the other sages? Rabbi Yehuda, it's represented by Rabbi Yehuda in the following brisa. The Tanya, we have a brisa. And the brisa is going to actually show us three different opinions with regards to this question about having Birkas Kohanim duchening at Mincha and Ne'ilah. So the brisa says as follows. Shachris u'musaf Mincha Ne'ilah Kulan yesh b'hen nesiyas kapayim. Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, all of them have nesiyas kapayim, all of them have duchening. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Shachris u'musaf yesh b'hen nesiyas kapayim, Mincha Ne'ilah ein b'hen nesiyas kapayim. Shachris and Musaf have duchening, have nesiyas kapayim, have birkas kohanim, but Mincha and Ne'ilah do not. That's Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yossi takes a middle ground. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Ne'ilah yesh ba nesiyas kapayim, that Ne'ilah does have duchening, but Mincha ein ba nesiyas kapayim, but Mincha does not have duchening. Now what is this whole argument about? That's the Gemara's question. What are they arguing about? So just to go over the opinions again, everybody agrees that you always duchen at Shachris and at Musaf. The question is, what about Mincha and Ne'ilah? So Rabbi Meir held that you do duchen at Mincha and Ne'ilah, at least of Yom Kippur. And Rabbi Yehuda held that you don't duchen at neither Mincha nor Ne'ilah. And Rabbi Yossi held Mincha you don't, but Ne'ilah you do. So what's this all about? That's the Gemara's question. Explains the Gemara. Rabbi Meir Sava, Rabbi Meir held, Ko Yoma Taima Ma'ilo Parshi Kani Yadayu. What's the reason why on regular days the Kohanim don't spread their hands? They don't do the priestly blessing. What's the reason? It's because B'mincha. So why don't they do it at Mincha? Mishum Shichrus. Because we're afraid of drunkenness. Because by Mincha in the afternoon, you've had your big, your afternoon meal. And so when you get back from Mincha, we're concerned that the Kohanim might be a little shikr, a little drunk, and they're not allowed to duchen when they are inebriated, as the Gemara will show us. So that's why on a normal day, on regular days of the year, we never have duchening at Mincha. We're concerned that maybe the Kohanim would have drunk before Mincha. In the morning, we're not concerned about that. Shachris, most of we're not concerned. But come Mincha time, that's a concern, so we have no duchening whatsoever at Mincha on a regular day. However, on Yom Kippur, they're not going to be drunk, right? It's a fast day. So therefore, Reb Meir says, Ha'idna, today, Leka Shechris, on Yom Kippur, or a fast day in general, you don't have a concern of drunkenness, and therefore it's okay to duchen at Mincha and at Ne'ilah. That's why Rabbi Meir says you do duchen at Mincha and Ne'ilah. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yehuda held, Shachris u'musaf tekol yoma lo shliach shichrus lo gazru b'rabbanan. Shachris and musaf, which normally there's no shichrus, there's no drunkenness, and therefore on a regular day you're allowed to duchen at Shachris and musaf. So the Rabbanan made no decree against those times, and neither did they make a decree on Yom Kippur. But Mincha Ne'ilah dekol yoma shlicha shechris. Mincha Ne'ilah Yom Kippur, that we say on a regular day, there would be drunkenness by that point. We are concerned that maybe the Kohanim would have taken some drinks by then. So therefore, Gazru B'hu Rabbanan, the rabbis decreed on Yom Kippur also. It's like a low plug, we don't differentiate, and every day of the year there's no duchening at Mincha and Ne'ilah. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Savar, and the third opinion, Rabbi Yossi, who said that you don't duchen at mincha, but you do duchen at ne'ilah, so he held mincha de'isa b'chol yama gazru b'hu rabbanan. Mincha, which you have every day of the year, and you're not allowed to duchen, so there they were gozer, there they decreed that you can't duchen at mincha on Yom Kippur either. But ne'ilah de'leisa b'chol yama lo gazru b'rabbanan. But ne'ilah, which doesn't exist the rest of the year, there's no, on a regular day, we don't say you can't duchen at ne'ilah, there is no ne'ilah. So therefore, on Yom Kippur, there was no decree against ne'ilah, against duchening at ne'ilah, and therefore Rabbi Yossi permits the Birkas Kohanim, the priestly blessing, the duchening at ne'ilah. Okay, so that's the machlokas, that's the dispute here. What is the halacha? Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, halacha ki Rabbi Meir. The halacha is like Rabbi Meir, that there's duchening at mincha and ne'ilah on Yom Kippur and fast days. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan said, Nahagu ha'am ki Rabbi Meir. That the custom that the nation has, the people have the custom like Rabbi Meir. Rava Amar, and Rava says minhag Rabbi Meir. The minhag is like Rabbi Meir. So the first one said the halacha is like Rabbi Meir. The second one said the people have a custom to go like Rabbi Meir. And the third one said the minhag, the proper custom is like Rabbi Meir. Not just that the people have that custom, but that is the proper custom. Now, but what's all this? What are each of these expressions? So the Gemara elaborates. It says, Manda Amar halacha Rabbi Meir. The opinion that said that the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, we paskin, we rule like Rabbi Meir, that means darshina nula b'pirka. That means we teach it in the shir, we teach it in public. The rabbi gets up and he says, these are the halachos, and the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, that on Yom Kippur and on fast days you can duchen at mincha, you should duchen at mincha, and on Yom Kippur you should duchen at ne'ilah. That's what it means to say the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, and we teach it. We teach that's the halacha. Mandam or minhag, the third expression, which was that the minhag is like Rabbi Meir, the custom is like Rabbi Meir. So that sounds like it's a bona fide custom. We're not completely certain that should be the halacha, but that's what we were leaning towards. So therefore, it means midrash lo darshin. We don't get up and teach it in public and say this is the halacha because we're not totally certain. However, uruye morinon. We rule that way. If somebody asks, should we duchen? We say, yes, you should duchen. Because that's what we believe to be the halacha, and that is the minhag. It's a custom. It's a minhag kosher. Rashi says it's a proper minhag, and so it's proper to do that. But since we're not certain of the halacha, we don't teach it in public. And lastly, which was the second thing on the list, the one that said Mandam or Nahagu, the one that said that the nation took the custom to go like Rabbi Meir, that sounds like that's just what the people do. Whether it's a good minhag, a proper minhag, not clear. That's what the people do. So according to that opinion, Uruye la marinan, we don't even tell people to do it. If they ask us, we don't say to go like Rabbi Meir. However, the avid v'lo madrin. But if they do it, we don't return them. We don't stop them from doing it. So if somebody gets up and starts duchening at mincha on Yom Kippur, we won't stop them. That's the opinion that said Nahagu ha'am. The nation took the custom like Rabbi Meir. Now, that's one set of opinions as to what the halacha is. Now the Gemara continues. Rav Nachman Amar, Rav Nachman says, halacha Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, the last opinion who said that you don't duchen at mincha, but you do duchen at ne'ilah. V'halacha Rabbi Yossi, and says the Gemara, and the halacha is indeed like Rabbi Yossi. That is the Gemara's final ruling, that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. So ask the Gemara if that's the case, that the halacha is that we duchen at ne'ilah, but we don't duchen at mincha. So it says the ha'idna my time a parshikani yadai b'minchasa the Taanisa. So why is it that we do duchen at mincha nowadays on a Taanis, Why is there on fast days we duchen at mincha if that's not the halacha? If the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, that one is not to duchen. So the Gemara explains, Kivan de bisamach l'shkiyas hachama kaparsi, since they are spreading their hands, they're duchening, they're doing the siyas kapayim near shkia, near sunset. So therefore, kitfilas ne'ilah damya. It's similar to ne'ilah, and therefore it's permitted. Meaning that which we said that they shouldn't duchen on a fast day at mincha. That's when if you daven mincha earlier in the day. The assumption is that on a normal day you daven mincha early, and therefore they said just like on a normal day where you daven mincha early you can't duchen. So on a fast day if you daven mincha early you can't duchen. But since the custom apparently for them, and in some congregations today, is to daven mincha towards the end of the day, right before sunset. So then that's more similar to ne'ilah already. That's already during the time frame of ne'ilah, and therefore it's okay to do nesiyas kavayim, to duchen, for the kohanim to give the priestly blessing, because at that point it's not similar to a normal day where we are concerned that they might be drunk. Here it's a fast day. We're not concerned that they might be drunk, and also it's not really similar to what goes on a normal day, because they're davening mincha much later. Okay. Now the Gemara goes on. It says, "Dekuli amamiyas shikur asur b'nesiyas kapayim." Now what we do see though is that everybody agrees that someone who's drunk is prohibited from performing the priestly blessing. Is prohibited from birkas kohanim. The Gemara wants to know, Mina hani mili. What is the source for this? How do we know that a Kohen who has drunk is not allowed to duchen? So Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said the name of bar Kapara. Lama nismecha parshas Kohen mivarech parshas Nazir. Why is it that the parsha, the section of Birkas Kohanim in the Torah, where it says, Kos of Archos b'nei Yisrael amar lahem, that Moshe, I guess, says to Aaron, this is how you should bless or Hashem says to him, I don't remember if it's Hashem to Moshe, or just Moshe, or Hashem straight to Moshe and Aaron, that this is how Aaron should bless the people, and Mar lahem yivarecha, Hashem yishmerecha, right, the whole blessing that we say for Birkas Kohanim, like Hashem should bless you and guard you, etc. Now, that parsha in the Torah is juxtaposed with the parsha of Nazir, of the Nazirite who forbids himself from drinking wine and from becoming tamei. So the Gemara asks, why is it juxtaposed? Parshas Nazir. Why is the parsha, the section that deals with the Birkas Kohanim, put right next to the section about a Nazir? And the Gemara explains it's to tell you that man Nazir asur b'yayin, just like a Nazir is forbidden to drink wine, af Kohen mivarech asur b'yayin, so too a Kohen who is giving the priestly blessing is forbidding from drinking wine. That's the source. Maskif lo avuad Rabbi Zera. Now the father of Rabbi Zera asked on this. Amrila Oshia bar Zavda. Some say it was Oshaya bar Zavda who asked it. If that's the case, if we're learning from Nazir, so then let me take you a step further. Ima Nazir asur b'chartzan, akoy mevarech asur b'chartzan. So a Nazir is forbidden to have even the peels of grapes. Not just wine. A Nazir can't have anything from grapes. So you should say, if you're learning from Nazir, that a Kohen who's making the priestly blessing shouldn't be allowed to have any grape product. Forget about wine. Even just to eat grape peels should be forbidden. And that we've never heard of. So Rabbi Yitzchak explained Amakra, because the pasuk says Lisharso, that when it says that Hashem separated the tribe of Levi to carry the Aron, Lisharso, to serve him, Ulivarech bishmo, and to bless by his name. So it says Lisharso Livarech bishmo, to serve and to bless. So we learn from there, Ma mishares mutter b'chartan, just like someone who's serving is allowed to consume grape products, as those who were served in the Mishkan. So af kohen mevarech mutter b'chartan, so too a kohen who's making a blessing is allowed to consume great products like the peel. So because it says l'sharso ulevarich next to each other, so we can learn from l'sharso, from the way that we serve is the way that we are mevarich, that just like great products are permitted to one who's serving in the Mishkan, so too, even though you can't serve drunk, but so too, the great products are permitted for someone who is saying Birkas Kohanim. Top of the next page, it says, so if that's true, so if you're learning from the service in the Mishkan, so you could go a step further and say, Imam Isharis Ba'amum Lo, Afkoin Mevarich Ba'amum Lo. So if we're learning from serving in the Mishkan, so a man who has a Kohen who has a blemish, he's not allowed to serve in the Mishkan. So we should say that just like if you have a blemish, you can't serve in the Mishkan, so too, if you have a blemish, you can't do Birkas Kohanim. But that's not the halacha. So if we're really learning from serving in the Mishkan, then we should learn that you can't do Birkas Kohanim if you have a blemish. So the Gemara says, no, ha'iskish l'nazir. No, we compare it to Nazir, and Nazir, there's no, restriction on someone who has a blemish. So just like you could be a Nazir with a blemish, you could do Birkas Kohanim with a blemish. So the Gemara says, why are you learning from Nazir and going leniently and saying, oh, we learned from Nazir that you can have a blemish. Let's learn from serving in the Mishkan and go stringent and say you can't have a blemish to do Birkas Kohanim. So why are how are we choosing which one to learn from? Do we learn from, it seems both are sources to learn to Birkas Kohanim, Nazir and serving in the Mishkan. So how do we pick and choose which one to learn from? If anything, we should go l'chumra, we should be more stringent. So the Gemara says, Asmachta ninu midrabanan ulekula. Really, this whole thing isn't asmachta. This whole thing is all rabbinic, and the rabbis enacted certain laws revolving around the mitzvah of Birkas Kohanim, and they chose which and the rest, and they just supported it from verses, but it's just an asmachta. It's just a support, but it doesn't have to be like airtight in its proof, because they're just supporting themselves from verses, but they're supporting their own ideas, their own rabbinic enactments. And the implication here is that Birkas Kohanim is itself is derabanan, although that I think is not so simple and maybe debated. It's also possible to say that just the laws revolving around the Birkas Kohanim, the associated laws like not drinking, or that we forbid a Kohen from drinking for Birkas Kohanim, that may only be rabbinic, although even that also could be d'oraisa. It seems to be there's further discussion and research required around this, but definitely the Gemara seems to be saying that this whole thing is rabbinic, and therefore we can sort of pick and choose which psukim, which verses we want to use to support what we're saying here. Okay.